Here is Oscar winner Robert De Niro proving in his own way that Donald Trump is lying once again. They whacked him, not they 86'd him. In the Oscar-nominated script of Goodfellas, written by Nick Pileggi and Martin Scorsese, not a single mob guy uses the term 86 for anything. It appears Donald Trump was hate watching this program last night when I once again read Merriam-Webster's explanation of the etymology of the slang use of 86. Quote, 86 is slang meaning to throw out, to get rid of, or to refuse service to. It comes from 1930s soda counter slang, meaning that an item was sold out. Friends of mine who worked in restaurants and are currently working in restaurants have been texting me to say that they use 86 all the time to mean they have run out of something. In 1933, in Walter Winchell's column, he wrote, 86 means all out of it. But after this program last night, Donald Trump took to social media to try to help prosecute James Comey by writing, quote, 86 is a mob term for kill him. They say 86 him, exclamation point. 8647 means kill President Trump. We patiently await Donald Trump producing the FBI wiretaps of mob guys saying 86. None of the FBI wiretaps that I've ever listened to have mob guys included the term 86 in anything they were talking about, including killing people. Donald Trump is now trying to co-prosecute the criminal case against James Comey by inventing dialogue. Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, who won him 34 guilty verdicts in a Manhattan criminal trial for business fraud in his payoff scheme to porn star Stormy Daniels, is now Donald Trump's acting attorney general, who, in a desperate attempt to win a nomination from Donald Trump to become the actual attorney general, has humiliated himself by obtaining the goofiest federal indictment in history, charging James Comey with threatening the life of the president by posting on Instagram this photograph of terrifying seashells. We await Donald Trump's social media team's search of every screenplay ever written, but in the meantime, it's worth noting that the most acclaimed gangster film of all time, which is also possibly the most acclaimed film of all time, The Godfather, does not have anyone saying 86, nor does the sequel, Godfather 2 or Godfather 3. The Godfather won Best Picture in the 1973 Oscars and Best Actor for Marlon Brando and Best Adapted Screenplay for Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola. That same year, the Best Original Screenplay Oscar went to the best movie about politics ever written by first-time screenwriter Jeremy Larner. And in that film that was made the same year as The Godfather, the term 86 does appear as grooming advice to the candidate Robert Redford.
For starters, we got to cut your hair and 86 the sideburns.
The James Comey prosecution is, of course, outrageous. It is beyond outrageous. But in the age of Trump, outrage takes real energy, and none of us has an unlimited supply of outrage energy. And so I, for one, in our coverage of this story, have decided to treat it as the jurisprudential joke that it is, and to save the outrage for Donald Trump ripping up the deal Iran signed with the United States in an agreement with President Obama, negotiated by Secretary of State John Kerry, and joined by the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Russia, and China, in which Iran promised in writing to never develop a nuclear weapon and agreed to strict monitoring conditions everywhere in Iran to make sure they were not developing a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump ripped up that deal in his first term as president, and now Donald Trump is outrageously waging a war in an attempt to get that deal again with Iran. 13 Americans have been killed in that war for no reason. Dozens seriously injured. Thousands of Iranians killed. A girls' school targeted by an American missile, killing hundreds of people. Donald Trump achieved nothing by killing those girls in their school. So I save my outrage for the people who are dying in Africa tonight because Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Secretary of State Marco Rubio took life-saving medicine away from those people. Babies born with AIDS in Africa because Donald Trump and Elon Musk took their mother's HIV medicine away from them during their pregnancies. Food that was on its way to delivery in a famine zone in Africa to starving people, stopped by Elon Musk and allowed to rot in a warehouse. Too many people are dead tonight because of the capriciousness and vicious cruelty of Elon Musk working under Donald Trump's authority and producing what Bill Gates, whose foundation has done so much life-saving work in Africa, called, quote, the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children. That's where our outrage belongs. James Comey is going to be fine. James Comey's not in trouble. The only question is when the case will be thrown out of court. No one is better equipped to defend himself against a ridiculous Trump indictment than a former FBI director, a former federal prosecutor, James Comey, who has a team of the best possible lawyers who will crush Donald Trump's clownish acting attorney general, who was Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer. And so, in a news environment where what was happening to James Comey was the most outrageous thing Donald Trump was doing, then outrage would, of course, be the right frame for that story. But another way to look at it now is to see just how invaluable it will be to history, to see what a gift it is to historians, including legal historians. Historians will see in the James Comey prosecution the madness of Donald Trump run wild. Historians will see that the person in charge of Donald Trump's Justice Department was willing to humiliate himself to a degree that no other person in that position has ever chosen to do. It is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump's acting attorney general is acting only for Donald Trump. And the legal outcome that James Comey will achieve through a dismissal or other ending of that case will be a full humiliation of Donald Trump and Todd Blanche. Complete and total humiliation of the both of them. No one will be defending that prosecution a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or ever. Todd Blanche will lie about it for the rest of his life. After he leaves Donald Trump's Justice Department, he will pretend for the rest of his life that he had nothing to do with that indictment. But that indictment and the dismissal of that indictment will stand as proof in writing of just how abusive Donald Trump was, abusive to the people working for him, abusive to Todd Blanche, abusive to the Constitution, abusive to common sense. And Todd Blanche will stand convicted by history as someone who violated his oath to the Constitution by pursuing this indictment. Nothing the Trump Justice Department does will speak as simply and clearly to history as this indictment of James Comey and the eventual dismissal of the case. Every restaurant worker in America tonight is now legally smarter than Donald Trump's acting attorney general and Donald Trump. They all know what 86 means. It's that simple. Donald Trump and Todd Blanche have found a way to expose themselves, and they are both too stupid to know what they have exposed about themselves in their indictment of James Comey. War is the ultimate test of presidential credibility. And Donald Trump has entered his war with no credibility and continues to find new ways to damage his credibility every day. And the James Comey indictment is now helping to separate voters from Donald Trump, voters who haven't already left him. This indictment is utterly harmless to James Comey. He has the strength to crush it, and he will. The indictment only weakens Donald Trump, humiliates Donald Trump. And weakening and humiliating Donald Trump is what is necessary to separate more and more voters from Donald Trump and Trumpism, with polls now indicating Donald Trump's approval rating is the lowest it has ever been. And so a weak, humiliated president was essentially on trial today in a Senate hearing about his war in Iran, with a weak and humiliated Secretary of Defense unable to defend his war.
Open source reporting has estimated that the military has used an outrageous number of Patriots. I'm not even going to say the numbers, but a lot of Patriots, a lot of THAAD rounds, JASSM-ER, Tomahawks, very expensive, exquisite. We can't make these munitions overnight, and it's clear from your budget request that you know that. Can you tell us how many years specifically is it going to take to replace these systems?
Senator, thank you for the question. I would defer to the comptroller on the amount, because I think it's a lot higher than 53. If you look at long-range fires, JASSMs, LRASMs, Tomahawks, we're looking at $238 billion.
Okay,
we're looking at $40 billion for hypersonic. So I actually think it's closer to $330 billion in munitions.
Okay, how many years to replenish? That's the question.
I think that's exactly the right question, too, Senator, because the time frame we were existing under was unacceptable.
Okay, well,
and
tell
what this
me,
budget does, months and years, fast.
Years.
I mean, we're building new plants in real time.
So just to replace what we have expended.
I said months.
And then you said years.
Both, it depends on the weapon system, but 2 to 3, 4x of what we have today.
Okay.
So yes, we're dealing with a reality under the previous administration of what they sent to Ukraine and what they allocated elsewhere.
Okay, I got it. So
And
we
we're
fired
rapidly doing
years
it quickly.
worth of munitions. And it is clear that these are being expended to try to achieve some objectives.
Once again today, Donald Trump said, quote, "We've already won." This time he added a touch of madness in which he thinks there's some kind of scoreboard in war, like a football game, when he said, quote, "We've already won, but I want to win by a bigger margin."
We've already won, but I want to win by a bigger margin.
No one contradicts Donald Trump more than Donald Trump, and he did it today in talking about the Iranian government.
They want to make a deal badly. And we have a problem because nobody knows for sure who the leaders are.
So sentence one is, they want to make a deal badly. Sentence two is, we don't know who they are. It is impossible to say they want to make a deal if you then say nobody knows who the leaders are. And so Donald Trump is now in effect saying he doesn't know who he is at war with now. On day 61 of Donald Trump's war, he doesn't know who his war is against, who his war is fighting. And in the history of American war quagmires, from Vietnam onwards, no president before Donald Trump has ever been so lost that that president did not even know who the enemy was in that war, in the war that that president was waging. And it could not be more obvious that Donald Trump cares much more about building a ballroom. Donald Trump cares much more about prosecuting James Comey than Donald Trump cares about his own war on day 61 of that war. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. He serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the Appropriations Committee. Senator, was there an objective identified in Donald Trump's war in this hearing today that has been achieved or is on the way to being achieved?
Not even close, Lawrence. And now you know why the Trump administration refused for so long to have one of the decision makers testified in public. They've had these closed hearings, and in closed hearings, you see the same story, which is they can't keep their story straight. They constantly change their rationales. One day Trump says, we won. Of course, why the hell are we still in the war if we won? We haven't won. The Straits of Hormuz are now closed when they were open. We have a more militant regime in power. And so Hegseth just told the whole public today what we knew from what he was saying behind closed doors, which is they don't have a plan. They don't know what they're doing. And yet we have Americans who've been killed, hundreds wounded, as you mentioned, thousands of civilians dead throughout the region. Gas prices are going up, and this is costing us $1 billion a day and counting. It is a disgrace from start to finish, making us less safe.
I want to listen to what the Republican chair of the Armed Services Committee, Senator Wicker, asked today about Vladimir Putin.
And briefly, General Kane, there's no question that Vladimir Putin's Russia is taking serious action to undermine our efforts for success in Iran. Is there any question about that?
Senator, I think there's actions and activities that are mindful of the hearing room we're in, but there's definitely some action there.
And Senator, obviously the chair of the Armed Services Committee is asking one of those questions that he already knows the answer to, given the information that he's privileged to have about this. And I noticed that he asked that question of General Kane, not bothering with Pete Hegseth on a question like that.
Well, that's exactly right, because Putin has been one of the big winners of the Trump-Netanyahu war against Iran. We've waived the sanctions that have been put on the sale of Russian oil. And we've now had our second U.S. ambassador to Ukraine quit within a period of a year because, as both our ambassadors said, Donald Trump is throwing the Ukrainian people and their democracy under the bus in favor of Vladimir Putin. So, yes, Vladimir Putin has a big smile on his face as this war in Iran continues.
So Donald Trump is threatening the Chancellor of Germany. He's making angry statements about the British Prime Minister, other heads of state. Not a word about Vladimir Putin, not a single word about Vladimir Putin helping Iran in this war. What should Donald Trump be saying about and to Vladimir Putin now?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump and his administration should be supporting the Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom instead of essentially cutting off support, refusing to support the sanctions that we're pushing for in Capitol Hill. Instead, what he's doing is cozying up once again to his friend Vladimir. And not only is that hurting the Ukrainian people, but Vladimir Putin is essentially taking Trump to the cleaners around the world, including in terms of Iran and our relaxation of sanctions. So we've got a situation where our adversaries are very happy at the moment because Donald Trump has gotten us plunged and stuck in this war in Iran, which we should end today. When you're digging a hole, stop digging.
Donald Trump clearly, at this point, seems lost. He doesn't know who to negotiate with. That's what he's saying publicly. We don't even know who to talk to.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is a war that is now over 60 days old and never authorized by Congress, clearly making us less safe. The region that was already volatile is now completely on fire. Americans are paying higher gas prices. And Lawrence, one of the other things Secretary Hegseth said in the hearing today was absolutely absurd, was that the clock under the War Powers Act, which says that after 60 days, the President of the United States has to wind down hostilities. Hegseth has essentially said because of this ceasefire, the clock stopped. Well, that's a bunch of nonsense. And no self-respecting Senate Republican should accept that complete fabrication. Because even if you take the War Powers Act as they interpret it, and they've been misinterpreting it because nothing under that act allows the president to start a war for 1 day, let alone 60 days. But even if you accept their definition, Donald Trump needs to be winding this war down by law right now, instead of talking about winding it up again. And Republicans are completely making a mockery of themselves and our Constitution if they let him get away with this complete fabrication about the War Powers Act after they've already surrendered their authority under the Constitution of the United States.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you very much for joining our coverage tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, Donald Trump's Speaker of the House, as I said today, said, "We are not at war," and he said it twice. That's how much he must believe it. Our next guest, New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist, asks, with the world's economy being held hostage in Donald Trump's war, what could possibly go wrong? That's next with Nicholas Kristof. The American Automobile Association survey, a gallon of gas now costs $4.30 on average in this country, up 7 cents since yesterday, and up 44% since the start of Donald Trump's war. Gasoline in California has topped $6 a gallon. Prices for diesel fuel are roughly $1 higher than gasoline on average. The Wall Street Journal reports prices at the pump in Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Iowa climbed faster than in any other states over the past week. According to AAA, Trump won all 5 in the 2024 election. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said this.
We're very well aware that people are experiencing higher gas prices all over the country now, and that hurts. And those hikes may continue to happen. And other things are going to start to reflect airline fares I mentioned, and other products and services that are dependent upon petroleum and derivatives of petroleum. People are going to start to feel that.
Polling shows Donald Trump's approval rating on the cost of living is now down to just 22%. And today, when Speaker of the House Mike Johnson was asked how long he would let Donald Trump's war go on without a vote by Congress, the Speaker of the House actually said, "We're not at war." New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Nicholas Kristof writes, 2 months into the war, Iran and the United States each seems to feel it is in a stronger position. Faced with the prospect of making concessions to the other side, each may prefer to delay or escalate with the world economy held hostage. What could possibly go wrong? Joining us now is Nicholas Kristof, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and columnist for the New York Times. Nick, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So Donald Trump today is saying he doesn't know who to even talk to in Iran.
And of course, he created that situation by, with what he initially billed as a great triumph by decapitating the regime. And, he's boasted of regime change. In a sense, he did get regime change. He created a harder line regime, one that is more diffuse, more IRGC. And, of course, the Iranians likewise have this sense of being overconfident, that time is on their side. And it's just so frustrating to see this. One can imagine a deal being done, Lawrence, but not with these characters.
So Henry Kissinger spent the rest of his life after the Vietnam War blaming the Congress, especially Democrats in Congress, for not letting him fight the Vietnam War the way he wanted to. The lesson being, democracies don't like wars like this. Iran is not a democracy. Iran, those people are, whoever is in the leadership there is not worried about midterm elections.
That's exactly right. I actually have a contact in the Iranian foreign ministry who periodically WhatsApps me, and I'm WhatsApping them saying, give me my Iranian visa so I can get there. And what they're pushing is that this vulnerability of the U.S. to gas prices, the discontent with the war, and so they are, they're smart people. They understand the vulnerability of Trump, and I think they're probably right that they can outlast Trump on this politically. Clearly, Iran is suffering. Clearly, they're hurting, but the Iranian leadership doesn't really care about hurting Iranian people.
One of the things I talked about in the previous segment was the distribution of our outrage, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm choosing the Comey indictment as the place where I'm not going to put the outrage energy, because there's too many people dying in Africa tonight and have died already because of the choices of Donald Trump, the cruelty of Donald Trump, Elon Musk. How would you suggest, because your view of the entire world of what is happening under Donald Trump is clearer than anyone else I know, how would you suggest we focus our outrage?
Well, if you're talking about the Iran war, in some ways I would focus on the opportunity costs. So we've put, with just the money that we put in so far, we could have had child care for every 3- and 4-year-old in America. We could also have had college education free for every family earning less than $125,000 a year. And instead, we've allocated that money and created a worse strategic position. We've badly hurt the Iranian people, who we said we were going to help. And we've created a global crisis that is going to particularly hurt people in poor countries. Higher fertilizer costs, higher transportation costs are going to mean that kids are going to starve in South Sudan, and it may well be that more kids will die in Africa of this war than will die in Iran and the Gulf.
The way Donald Trump is just confusedly stepping through this war, while every day seeming to cling to other things he's more interested in, like the ballroom or the Comey prosecution, is something we've never seen. Any other president in one of these quagmire wars is deep in the quagmire every day, for better or worse.
I think the problem for Trump is that at this point he realizes there is no good solution. He can escalate militarily, but he's seen that does not work. He can continue the blockade. That hasn't worked so far. He can do a deal, but any deal that he does now is going to be worse than the one he walked out of, the JCPOA. It's going to be worse than what he could have gotten in January. And so, lately, as you know, Lawrence, he's clung to this idea that Iran is about to run out of oil storage capacity. Yeah. And that's going to be the silver bullet that is going to save him. But, boy, you can't find any expert outside the White House who thinks that is very likely.
What is your expectation for the Iranian people trying to get through this?
They have suffered tremendous, they had the Iran-Iraq war, as you know, where they suffered brutally for 8 years. And the Iranian regime, is going to be happy to inflict more pain. The economy in Iran has always been a disaster, and it's more of a disaster now, but Iran is positioned to suffer that pain, and the U.S. is not. And so I think that, we've seen Mujtaba, the new supreme leader, double down on what they're not going to compromise on the nuclear side, on the Strait of Hormuz side. And I think that they are going to largely stick to their guns. I don't think our blockade is going to change that calculation.
Nicholas Kristof, thank you very much for joining our coverage.
Good to be with you.
Thank you. And coming up today, the New York Times is reporting on a possible suicide note written by sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein before he was found dead in prison. That's next with Congressman Ro Khanna. Today, the House Oversight Committee conducted a closed-door interview with billionaire Ted Waite, who is a co-founder of the Gateway Computer Company. Ted Waite was in a romantic relationship with Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell in the early 2010s. His name and his emails appear in documents released in the Department of Justice's Epstein case, including correspondence with Ghislaine Maxwell. And today, the New York Times is reporting a suicide note purportedly written by Jeffrey Epstein in a Manhattan jail has been kept secret for nearly 7 years, locked up in a New York courthouse. A cellmate said he discovered the note in July 2019, after Mr. Epstein was found unresponsive with a strip of cloth around his neck. Mr. Epstein survived that incident, but weeks later was found dead in the jail. On Thursday, the New York Times petitioned the judge to unseal the note, which said it was time to say goodbye. The cellmate, Nicholas Tartaglione, recalled. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee. Congressman Khanna, did you know anything about this possible suicide note before today's reporting by the New York Times?
I knew that it existed because there had been a log of it in the Epstein files, but I didn't know the contents of it. And it's quite shocking that this has been sealed for 7 years, that it wasn't released under the Epstein Transparency Act. We now need to make sure that we see it because, as you know, there's so many questions about Epstein's death.
So according to the Times report, it's locked up in a case file involving some kind of disagreement among the lawyers who represented that cellmate of Jeffrey Epstein's in what seems like some kind of civil dispute. It's hard to tell what that dispute is. Do you think that's going to be that will be penetrated?
I do, because the law, as we drafted it, the Epstein Transparency Act, said that traditional privileges do not apply, that the public's right to know trumps all of that. And so it is a violation, in my view, that they haven't released it. Of course, they haven't released 3 million files. But I do believe now, especially when you've got the Department of Justice Inspector General and GAO looking at the compliance, that they will say that this needs to come out and go to the Oversight Committee.
What can you tell us about today's interview with that former friend of Ghislaine Maxwell's?
Well, I was there. Unfortunately, it wasn't very productive. The Republicans were on a fishing expedition. They were more interested in getting the Clintons than they were in actually getting the Epstein perpetrators. That's because this gentleman had gone to a wedding for Chelsea Clinton. We were interested in finding out what he knew about Maxwell's abuse and what he knew about Epstein's abuse. I didn't find him very credible when he said that he knew nothing, given that they were in a romantic relationship. So it was not very productive, but we are going to now have Bondi coming. We are going to have Lutnick coming. Those are going to be far more instructive.
There's some people are making a distinction about testimony that's given under oath to the committee and then testimony where the witness is not sworn. But isn't it the case that lying to Congress is in and of itself a crime? And so the issue of whether someone's put under oath or not doesn't seem all that crucial here.
You're absolutely right, Lawrence. Lying is a crime. And candidly, there have been Trump officials who've lied even when they're under oath, and there are people who tell the truth when they're not under oath. So there is an obligation to tell the truth, and you can be prosecuted if you don't.
So, for example, on the Bondi testimony, is that a case where the witness will be sworn and under oath?
I appreciate your details because this is exactly what we're negotiating right now. So it's likely going to be a similar format where it's not under oath, but we're pushing that it be videotaped. We're negotiating the hours. It was a huge deal just to get her back in front of the committee. But it should be a long interview. It should be under videotape. I don't think it's going to be under oath, but she still is going to be obligated to tell the truth.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
And coming up, Donald Trump's acting attorney general actually said that if Donald Trump doesn't make him the next Senate-confirmed attorney general, he will say, quote, "I love you, sir." But now he's hoping the indictment of James Comey will get him the big job. That's next with Congressman Jamie Raskin.